Apparently. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good, good. Okay, so I'm just going to flip out to the other window to make sure that it's not duplicating again like it did last week. We had a bit of a technical issue there. Yep, we're good. Okay, no one panicking. We're in the wrong section. So I got my feed open here. All right, welcome everybody. And tonight what we're going to go through is a little bit of a discussion on difficult problems. And I wanted to just sort of clarify some questions as well. So far so good. I'm really enjoying the discussion that we're having on Teams about the problems and the way that we're shaping them. So, and that's great. I was in a session today at a conference and they were talking about modeling problems. And it was interesting to see that they're still using ideas from, a long time ago. And it's good to see some things never change. That was quite a relief. But let's get on with what we've got to do today. And on that note, I'm going to attempt a screen share over here. If you can't see the slides now, I wanted to go through this process with you and let me know if you can't see that. So I've got the Griffith Business School logo up and we're having a little bit of a walkthrough. Before I get into this, does anyone have any questions about the assignment that you need answered, or are there any kind of follow-up issues that you'd like to talk about? Please let me know. Otherwise, I'll just kick on with this. All right. So a bit of a conceptual leap, and I wanted to take a bit of time to no, Jordan, good question. Will you be assigned your teams on Friday PM? We're trying to do it tomorrow, but you won't be expected to submit anything until the deadline. So that will be at 11:30 tomorrow. We're meeting to try and 11 o'clock. Sorry, we're meeting tomorrow to set it all up. So you'll be allocated to a group. Yeah, Tala, go right ahead. You can ask your question. Yeah, so I'll go through these in order. You'll get a little notification of the group that you're in, and I will post some instructions regarding that. So that'll be tomorrow, hopefully. We're all meeting to figure it out. Those of you, so there is a complication with that. If you've been granted an extension and the feedback doesn't come on time, I will extend the deadline automatically for you. So don't worry about the deadline on this one. I will keep you posted about that because this is very experimental. And it's like a lost leader, so you got to take a bath on it in the beginning. So if it doesn't work, don't panic. This is our issue. So yeah. Next question was, are we required to share the concept map as well? I would share the document that you submit. So you submit the table, and the idea is that the concept map is submitted with that as well. I've seen a couple of them already, and I'm seriously impressed with the quality of the work and the thinking that's going in here. And the way that you guys, like the high level of creativity that's gone into some of them, which is actually quite amazing. I would definitely share that, share the whole lot. Do you want to see our analysis where we go to dismantle the problem in the template, or just go into the mapping? Do you want to see our analysis where we go, sorry, my phone keeps blacking out on me. Do you want to see our analysis where we go dismantle the problem in the template or just in the mapping? Good question. I would just have the table first as the way that it's laid out. So put whatever you want in that table and put the mapping in afterwards. Your analysis has to be implied, so I should be able to work it out. That's it. That you don't need to explain it in any detail, and I don't need to see that necessarily because it'll be obvious by your findings because I know what I'm looking for. No worries, Vince. James says, can you supplement the table with additional text, a couple of paragraphs? Yeah, by all means. Like, again, like the way that I've got it there, if you feel like you need to explain more, you can. I haven't put a word limit on this first one. There is on the second one, though, so try and stick within those boundaries if you can. I think I've said 750 words, something like that. But this one, if you want to add bits and pieces, if you don't think it's clear, then you can do that. But the map should be fairly clear. I've seen some already. You guys have been sharing them and asking for direction and that, and some of them are actually pretty good so far. yeah, try to keep your supplementary or your appendices in a little bit of a neater format if you can, and just maybe add like a paragraph afterwards or something like that. But yeah, by all means, if you need it. I mean, some of you, where you might need it is, I may not understand the context a little bit. So again, we're trying to take the writing out of this task, but like you'll notice at the front of the template, I've got a little narrative there that I use from the problem that I worked on, and interpersonal conflict one. And so if you feel like you need to explain more, like it's not clear, that's fine. So one thing to do is when you're writing that up, if you start to get into a really long story and it's very developed and it's getting into that wicked problem territory, pare it back. Choose to focus on a subset of it. But most people that I've seen, most people are doing a good job. And those of you that have asked for scoping guidance, I've seen some really big problems, and I'm trying to get you to focus a little bit more. Andrew says, it doesn't seem that hard, and I have been wondering if I'm missing something, or is it that we are dealing with problems that we can solve with the process? So Andrew, initially it doesn't seem that hard, and you'll find when you get feedback, hopefully, that you see a different perspective. But be warned, if your alternatives aren't alternatives, if they're just three of the same thing but written differently, you won't score that well on this first one. So that's the trap people always fall into with this first one. They always seem to, I wouldn't say take it easy, but one of the cognitive traps, or one of the mental traps that we fall into when we're trying to solve these problems is that we say, oh, okay, it's a, like, I can't remember who it was, but someone emailed me with their problem today, and they're saying all of the roads are pointing to this one thing. And I wrote back and said, that's because that might be the underlying concept that you're using to look at it. So yeah, it might be easy in the beginning, but try to make sure, just for your own sake, make sure that there are genuine alternatives, that it's not the same thing slightly different, because that's not an alternative. That's the same thing. And I find that to be the single biggest trap, because we don't see that bias that's under the surface there, or we don't see what's the thinking that's gone into the problem. So definitely, well, damn it, I just lost my chat feed. Definitely try to make sure, I can't say too much more than that really, but just make sure they're genuine alternatives. Like, like look at the example that I've got there. But yeah, it will get harder as you try to simplify the solution. And some people have picked different issues. So I've actually had 3 or 4 different bits of feedback. So in the course feedback, when you guys submit it, it'd be great if you could say, I found this first part too easy, or send me an email or whatever, or Teams chat, because I've had people say it was too hard. So it's an interesting problem, actually. Can we discuss the mind map? I have listed the problem / the pros and cons of the alternatives. If you feel you need to, like if you feel it's not clear and you need that extra bit of security, then by all means, I won't penalize anyone for doing that. Talha says, it is like I don't know how to apply my methodology, or at least demonstrate, like lateral thinking or even complexity analysis, systems dynamics, or should we not go into these in A1? Yeah, Jordan's made a good point there. I just read that. I think genuine alternatives is the key point. Yeah, absolutely, Jordan, that's good. That's a really good point, Tyler. That's a very advanced level way of looking at it. And so if you are someone that's used to thinking methodologically, so if you think that way and you want to use a methodology, then by all means do that. And if you wanted to say, I've applied this technique to do this, to get this result, then you can do that. And there's tons of different strategies that, I mean, we only brushed over them in this course because it's a very short course and it's a general course, but you can do that by all means. So one of the ones 2 years ago, maybe, the guy was talking about solving traffic problems and, the usual things like staggering work hours. And he came up with this idea of having these massive parking lots where cars could be rotated in and out and driven by robots or something like that. It was a really weird solution, but we're starting to see that with robo-taxis. So, and he used concept shifting to get there. He changed the concept of travel and by doing that, did himself the world of good. Yeah, by all means. You don't have to go into deep level, and I don't mean to sound like I've been around a long time, but if you have a methodology and it's about problem solving, that there's been teaching this course for 5 years, there's a damn good chance I've heard of it. I follow all this stuff, so if there's something you want to use, by all means, stick it in there. Should the concept map in some way represent the alternative solutions? Now I feel like I have just one big brain dump. All right, so I'm going to touch on this because I've had several questions about this during the week. I said this last week, but I'll say it again here. I think it's important in reiterating that the problem is the solution. Like, this is the part that people don't get. So when you're mapping the problem out, so where you say it's a big brain dump, yeah, do another couple of drafts and try and present the core part of it, because what you'll see, and this is what one of the learning outcomes of the course is, the way that you see a problem is what you think the solution should be. And it's one of these tricks of your mind to separate the idea of a problem and a solution, because we've had mathematics drummed into us from a very early age. And it's like, here's a problem to be solved. The solution is in the formula, right? So try and refine it as much as you can to be representative of something. But if it gets to the point where you think, I don't think this makes sense, you've overthought it, it's overcooked, just leave it and I will figure it out. Remember what I said, remember what I said in the beginning of the course, if you're at the intro webinar, you're not being marked on your design skills either. So if it looks like crap, I won't mark you down for it looking like crap. I have to read that and make sense of it. Yeah, well, that's fine. Yeah, if you get stuck, I can definitely do that. And I would say that to everyone on the call. If you're not sure and you think my map's too unwieldy or it's too big, you can send it to me for feedback. That's what I get paid for. So don't worry about that. Don't put that out of your mind. But yeah, so the concept map should be clear enough so that I can read it. But so, for example, a bad one would be, my core problem is, so someone's talking about interpersonal conflicts. I'll pick on the problem I've got in the handout. And then that's interpersonal conflict. And then I start talking about chairs. Like, if it's not related and I can't follow it, it's not logical, but it should be. Can you put up a map? Sorry, that's a good idea, Andrew. We'll do that. Can you put up a map example tonight, please, and explain it? I've watched all the videos. Yep, no problem. So I actually had that idea today, but from a different level. So that's a damn good suggestion. Let me see if I can do that. So I'll just stop sharing. This is just I don't think there's much in here that we need to discuss. If you want to talk about any of these, we can. I'll come back to that. Let me just find a good one for you. All right, see if there's any other questions here. All right, so let's have a look at a concept map here. I'll find a good one for you. Let me see. I've got one. I'll see if I can load this into the chat. So here. All right. I'm trying to find a non-technical one. I know. There was one that I shared in the group. I'll see if I can just dig that up. Here's a simple one. It's taking forever to load. Okay, I'll see if I can share this. I'll just zoom in a little bit. And then, God damn it, what happened there? There it is. Give me a second here. I'm having slight technical difficulties with my... All right, here we go. All right, so while that's loading, I'll see if I can share my screen. All right. Can you guys see the risk management concept map on the screen at all? Or is it not working? Nope. No. All right. I must have pressed the wrong button. Let's try it. Why? You know, that worked last term. I don't know why it's not working now. Let me try sharing the... It's taken away my desktop sharing ability. Can you see it now? I've just tried to share it. No. All right. Yes. All right. All right. Okay. Good. Let's do it. So, a good concept map. Now, this one's about risk management, right? So this person's done one on, like this is an article here. I'll send you like an example here into the chat. So I'll just flick over and I'll copy it. I'll put it back there later. I want to make people dizzy. The idea here is that the point of including the concept map in the assessment is that we want to get to the root cause, or what we think is the main instigator of the problem. And difficult problems like the ones that you're working on tend to have something underneath the surface which isn't easily identifiable that's causing the pain, right? So if we think of risk management, it's like strategies to manage threats. So if we have a look at this bubble here, this person's put risk management and he's got what is it? Okay, so you could go further on with that. So he's taken 1, 2, 3, 4 concepts, secondary concepts, or what I call second order concepts around the bubble there. So where does risk management occur? Is it overseas or locally? Is it at work or in the workplace? So he's breaking it down. So these tertiary concepts are how you can break that down. So if I wanted to talk about risk management, the first thing I would say is who does it? So I was a workplace health and safety officer for a couple of years. So I can go, okay, who does it? Well, the workplace health and safety officer does it. They report to management. And then what's the format of the report? And you can literally branch out in massive bubbles here. What you want to do in your concept map is try to get it down to 4 levels if you can. So this is just like, I'll copy this for you so you can have a look at it. Oh, that's actually better there. It looks a lot cleaner, doesn't it? So then so this is risk management. So now I can read this and go, okay, risk management's about reporting to management about hazards, right? So where does it occur? These are the areas that it occurs. What methods can I use? I can use a computer. I can use the traditional 5x5 grid. I can use SWOT analysis or PESTLE or something like that, right? The idea here is to just explain the concept from a strategic vantage point where I think so. And a lot of the comments that have been up in the assessment section, what I've noticed is people want to explain everything in the map. It's a map, right? So it's a map. You're guiding me through the territory so that I could look at it and go, oh, I see what the problem is. Okay, so that's all you need to do there. So 3 key things when you're doing the mapping. So first one is the top level concept. What is you think the main problem is? The second part are what are the connecting elements underneath that? And then the third layer down there, like in this example here. This is a near perfect example of what a concept map is about. So is it just the issues in the mind map and not the solutions? That's correct. So by the end of the feedback, you'll realize, hopefully, you'll realize that the issues that you've identified that create the problem context also suggest the solution. So that's the tough part. The solution will be under the surface where we all make the mistake. And there's been excellent research done on this in the 70s on cognitive biases, if you've heard of that. The cognitive biases stuff pointed out that we bring subconscious biases with us every time we make decisions. We can't help it. It's just part of being human. We have tribal ones, values-based, cultural ones, and other ones as well. So don't think too much about it. Just shove it on the piece of paper and say, this is what I think the problem is. Here's the best part. It can't be wrong, right? I can't say to you, well, I completely disagree because I don't know your context, right? And these things are very subjective, and that's the point. So let me see if I can find another one. Let me see. I wonder if there was one on. We used to use one in first year that was actually a little bit more logical. This one's sort of. Um, oh, wait a minute, that's not what I wanted. Let me see. It's one of these. There it is. There. So wait for this to load. So this one's got a little bit more visual representation, right? So I will just. I'll remember to copy these. I'll leave them on the screen and I'll copy them. You'll see in that middle part, it's got water, and then it talks about where the resources come from. It links in evaporation and precipitation from the sun. So if you've done the sustainability course, we talk about how everything is connected. We kind of pick up on that philosophy in this course as well, and we take it, but we drill down to your particular problem. Everything is connected to the way that you see that problem and the people in it, right? Have a look at this. This is this one is being used worldwide. So this is a very well-known one. It's this person's actually redrawn it, but there are other versions of it. So you can see here all these things that are connected to it. And again, what you said, Andrew, is correct. It's just the issues. So the issues of evaporation, where does water come from? Where is it going? Condensation, recycling, and stuff like that. Okay. All right. Just checking the questions. Sorry, I'm confused. I look back at how to do the video, and there's an example of pros and cons. So I'll just get to your question in a second. There's a question I missed here from Brooke. Should we offer more than one solution, or do we build the solutions together? When you're writing so that'd be about the table, right? So you can have multiple solutions because it's going to be a staged solution. So ultimately, it's one big solution at the end. So just write, if you've got multiple ideas or steps, if you've got multiple ideas or steps, if you're thinking like a phased logical approach, you'll still wind up with the problem being solved, right? So just shove them all in there. That's fine. It doesn't have to be one complete, neat solution. That's not the way life works. So Andrew says, sorry, I'm confused. I look back at the how-to video, and there is an example with pros and cons. All right, good question. So pros and cons is a type of problem solving, right? I can't remember the proper name for it at the moment, but basically there's a decision tool that you can use with pros and cons, right? That's just one way to do the mapping. You don't have to do it that way. I put it there because a lot of people in the course last year and the year before really did that. They said, here's the positives of my approach and here's the negatives of my approach. And it's just a way that people like to think. You don't have to do that. You can do it the way that this water diagram is represented. It depends on how you learn, right, and how you think. If you find that it's easier for you to draw a picture and like this water example, then you might want to do that. But broadly speaking, I think most people that are weighing something up and they're looking at a possibility of a solution might want to look at it as from a positive. I mean, you don't have to say pros and cons. You can say positives and negatives. Like another technique that I've seen called causal systems diagrams or causal maps, if you wanted to do it that way. You have a look at this example here. This is a really cool way of doing it. And this is what I use generally if I'm trying to model something out, because, academics, you can do it this way. It's logical, why and how, if you were thinking about it. Sometimes you can put pluses and minuses on those arrows as well. So yeah, there's no hard and fast rules on how to draw a concept map. And there's also there's thousands of tutorials out there. So if you get stuck, there's some really good ones on YouTube if you want to know that. But again, just send me the map and say, is this right? And I'll tell you yes or no. And that might be the easiest way to do it. Yeah, the example with the pros and cons, that's just an option. That's one way. Majority of people back in 2017 liked that because it was like, here's the positives, here's the negatives. So plus and minus. In my problem, I can identify 4 transformations in the problem definition that needs to be worked on. Do I map alternative solutions for all 4? Or should I just treat each solution as an alternative solution? For example, yeah, Lucidchart's great. I'll show you some examples of what I use that for. And you have a free academic license, but you've got to contact them. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Let me start that again. Sorry. Yeah, and it's free. It's awesome. For examples, thank you, Nathan and others. I haven't got that far in the chat window yet. In my problem, sorry, Tyler, I'll start again. I can identify 4 transformations in the problem definition that need to be worked on. Do I map alternative solutions for all 4? Good question. I haven't read your problem, so I can't comment on that first part, but I'll get back to what I think in a second. Or should I just treat each transformation as an alternative solution? Yes, that's what you should do. For example, strategy needs alignment and communication channels needs to be formed. Or do I just try to link all 4 with a single solution? So that depends. So in a situation where you're looking at transformative change and leadership and you're saying we need to go in a new direction, you're setting a vision, right? It's very easy to say we need to be the #1 in our space. We need to be the best university in the world. So now underneath that would be the steps to get there, right? So we have to publish more, we need grants, we need high quality XYZ, whatever it might be. But when you're talking about a particular problem that has 4 different elements and 4 different transformations that need to take place, they're not alternatives. That's the things that need to happen. And I'd put that in your implementation part. In the alternatives, I would say I've looked at, so alternatives are holistic and they should cover the whole system of the problem. So you should say things like, here's the 4 things that this problem are, let's say. These are the 4 things that I want it to be. Here's the 4 alternatives, or 5 or 6 or whatever you want to put in there. These are the alternatives that I've found. And now when you're leaping from that to your implementation strategy, you can have those transformations in there. I try to keep that out of the alternatives because the more that you put things in the alternatives that reframe what the problem is, the harder it is for you to get your head around what it is you're trying to say. So the simplicity of Simon's framework breaks at this point because it's, well, what if I have 800 alternatives? Pick the best 4. So try and pick something because you have to do something, and that's the underlying pressure that we all feel. You have to actually do something at some point. So if you pick 4 transformations of what you think the problem is, without looking at it, I can't tell you, but I would say pick from those the alternatives that are the most meaningful and then move anything that's related to implementation into the final part of the table. So I hope that makes sense. All right. Thank you. Good questions tonight. And Tala, if you get stuck, just let me know. I'm happy to have a look to try and help you out here. I have gone into the wrong window, so just excuse me for a moment. You are not approaching it wrong at all. You've got it perfectly right. It is about transformation. That's one of the key things. And I often find you guys that come on these webinars, collaborates, and ask questions often score higher than others that don't, or at least people that listen to them. And the people that don't listen, they struggle with this part. And this is what these sessions are for. So, just keep asking these questions. Let's do it. Thank you. I'm having trouble messaging here. Yeah, it's a bit laggy tonight, isn't it? I missed a question, didn't I? Sorry, guys. Where's the bit about Lucid Charts disappeared off my... Lucid Chart is free. It's let me switch back windows. I'll just stop sharing the screen for a second. All right, so Vince has got it. Okay, now I can go back. Desktop, thank you very much. All right, so Vince has a question. Vince says, pros and cons mapping does assist in identifying how a problem is perceived by stakeholders. That's precisely the point. Yeah, and a lot of people work in businesses where there's a lot of stakeholder engagement. I understated this, and I had a group of people that my colleague Sandy was working with in Fiji who were trying to map out a climate change strategy, right? And we were really struggling with them, trying to explain to them like what we don't know what to do. How do we do this? And so we had this exercise plan called stakeholder analysis, where we looked at the different roles that the people in the government had. And we spent 8 hours with them going through the steps of who do you need to talk to, what relationships do you need to build in order to create this strategy. And what it showed me is I hadn't had much experience in government at that time. And it was like, okay, this is how government. This is how this particular government solves people through human relationships, through picking up the phone and talking to people, and they create these relationships. It's very valuable. Yeah, I've got a. I couldn't live without a whiteboard. Actually, it's a good point, Brooke. Some see problems, some do not, and that's, yeah, Vince. That's a very important point. I don't know how to say that another way. This is one of the difficulties of human problem solving versus natural problem solving. And I want to pull up a slide in a minute to show you what I mean. Uh, Humans all have different opinions, and sometimes you'll find yourself deep in a conflict with someone simply because their worldview is different. So a lot of the stakeholder stuff that you're talking about, Vince, is it's about the exchange of worldviews and different worldviews that shape the problem as well, different ways of seeing. And those of you that have ever mentored or coached someone or walked someone through a complicated process, you'll know what I mean, that they don't see what you see, but then after a period of time, they start to see it their own way. And, coaching can be a wonderful experience. It can be terrible, but anyway, a whiteboard. Yeah, I read that bit. Check out the Google Jamboard. Oh, thanks for that, Andrew. I haven't heard of that. You were going to start selling them. Good. That's excellent. I'll check that out. I use the mirror. It's new. No, I haven't heard about it. I've sorry, I just read that. I used the mirror thing and it took a few seconds to click in. That's brilliant. I have, this is probably not, I probably shouldn't share this, and I know I'm going to regret it, but I've got this, when I get stuck sometimes and I'm in the shower, I start thinking about my problems and I'll draw up on the wall what I think. And that has helped me more times than I can ever count. It's like, I wonder why this is. And I think it's because my brain can generally only focus on what I'm doing. So I'll draw up these pictures, and it's very helpful. And different people have different creative processes as well. There's this thing called verbal protocols, and which we would call just talking to yourself. And you can walk around and just chat to yourself sometimes, and that helps. If you're an extrovert, by the way, I only learned this recently, and if you're an extrovert, you have to talk things through. So sometimes you have to sit down with someone and chew up an hour of their time, and you talk it through, and they can help you shape and mold the problem, which is very good. Okay. All right. All right, so that was good. Google Jamboard. All right, I will check that out. That's great. Any other questions you guys want to ask? I just wanted to point out a couple of slides. Some of you probably haven't submitted yet. I wanted to just sort of, if you're still stuck on modeling your problem, I wanted to show you a couple of things from the slides that can help you if you're still stuck and you're a little bit confused. Let me just see. I'll just have to stop sharing for a moment to make sure I get it to the right spot. Glad I didn't have loads of solutions in it. Yes, please. No worries. All right. This little hack that I use. I just got to try and make this work. This is the limitation of this platform. Sometimes things don't go the way that you want. Oh, that's what I'll do. Instead of doing that, actually, give me 1 minute. That's not part of this, is it? All right. So a couple of years ago, let me just find this. I should have had this ready. I wanted to show you this if I can. There it is. Let me see. This is an oversimplification of it, but this is the simplest way I know to start modeling. Not modeling in the sense, so you'll see it in a minute. It'll come up. Why isn't it working? The world is against me. Where are you? Come on. That's the one I wanted. I want the whole picture though, not part of it. Oh, all right, give me 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. Okay. So I wrote this a few years ago. Full text available. Yes, please. Oh, there it is there. View full text. Come on. The internet's very slow here today. Okay, so let's have a look. Oh yeah, got to share the screen. That would help. Okay. I keep waiting for you to say Dr. Nick in your Dr. Nick in your podcast. All right, everybody. Simpsons reference. Okay, I'm going to share the screen now. And all right. I've been locked inside a room all week. Those Jamboards aren't cheap, Andrew. All right, now I want to see these Jamboards. Okay. All right. Can we? Oh, Brooke, your conversations popped up in the wrong. $7,000. Bloody hell. Sorry. Can we offer more than one solution, or should the solutions be built into one? Yes, you can offer more than one solution, because I'm going lighter on the first one, because in the second one, you'll get feedback and you'll refine it so that you don't have to get it pitch perfect first time around. Just do the best you can. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to this. With regards to alternative solutions suggested, surely they do need the ability of being implementable. Creative but impossible seems like a pointless alternative. Yes, that's a very good point. Absolutely. Try to avoid, I'm going to put a car into space unless you have the ability to do that. When garnering feedback from my superiors at work, should I state their position or just say they are superiors? Just say they are superiors. Whatever you do, yeah, that's okay. Please don't identify people. I mean, it is 99% unlikely that someone would leak an article from here and it would get back to your boss, but don't take the risk. All right, so you guys should be able to see bubbles. Just say they are your superiors. You should be able to see, like on the screen at the moment, research note with some bubbles. This is a place to start if you're getting stuck. So I like to do it this way because, I don't know, I think this way. I like to work backwards. So if for example, in this picture, you'll see like I've got a little square in the middle that says housing crisis, and then I've got the key actors that are involved. I might, and this is an oversimplification. So if you're a finance whiz, I apologize in advance, but this is just an example of ways of modeling and getting to the heart of an issue, right? So you can draw out 4 bubbles of who you think the 4 key people are. So you could look at it this way. I would look at it this way. The problem is the housing crisis. And there are 4 alternative viewpoints in the housing crisis that are the most relevant: investors, developers, homeowners, and the government, right? So this is old. So we've moved on from this thinking. This was 12 years ago or whatever. So then I extend it out. I add bubbles to it, right? So I add more bubbles to it. And then all of a sudden, I'm starting to see my own point of view. And if you want it, so then what do I do from there? So you might think, well, bubbles and a giant square, that's great, Luke, but what's the hack? Well, the hack is this, right? What I can do is there's this thing called a multiple cause diagram. So now that I've identified what I think the problem is and who are the main players in the problem, who is creating the problem, what I then try to do is draw up the relationships between them. How are they related? So in this diagram here, you'll see the bold figures. They're the first ones I wrote down. So I write the economy, and I would definitely do it like this. So, all right, so we've got the housing crisis down the bottom. What causes the housing crisis? So then I go, you should be able to see my arrow. I go up to greed. Then I say, so this is tongue in cheek. So this is a bit of a joke. I'm not saying that investors are greedy or anything like that. It was just to make a point. And the paper did get published. So then you've got capital. And this actually, I took this point of view from an article. So I decoded the article and shoved it in here. And then they withdrew their support. I wonder why. But anyway, so if you have a look at the housing crisis part down the bottom here, what you can do is you can stick on top of that the idea of that greed causes the housing crisis. So the next question to ask, what causes greed? Well, homeowners and investors, and and where do homeowners come from? They come from the economy. Who creates the economy? The government. and what relationship does developers have to that? Well, they're related to investors and they're related to the government. And these are, if you want to Google this, if you want to get stuck, these are called multiple cause diagrams. So if you get stuck and you can't quite frame your problem properly, this is a really easy way to get started. So again, and then it gets bigger. No, that's just my theory thing. You don't need that. I thought there was another diagram in this paper, but I don't think there is. Is it down the bottom? No. If we go back up, you'll see that it all started with this box and these three little bubbles here, like my micro, if you like, concept map. And yes, the arrows are going in the wrong direction. I realize that. So we've got the housing crisis in the middle. We've got investors that play a role, homeowners play a role, and the government play a role. So these are the key stakeholders. The next step is to figure out, okay, are there any other big picture people that are involved? And then the next step is to figure out how do they work together to create the problem. So this is just a very, this is a good way. And if you wanted to get fancy, you can, above these little arrows here, you can put plus and minus in that tool there. And you can, in the tool there, oh my God, when you draw it up on a piece of paper on the whiteboard or in the mirror or whatever you're using, you can actually do it this way. So if you're stuck and you're not sure, try this because it'll clarify your thinking. Like the concept map's supposed to do that, but if you find that it's not working, I find that this is a much simpler way to get into it, because now you're talking about causality, and causes means this causes the problem. So there was a much bigger one of this with pluses and minuses, but the editors maybe take it out. All right. Also, stuff is like posting 30 seconds after I hit send. Yeah, it's really slow tonight, isn't it? Really slow. All right, so this is just another technique, and I wanted to point this out because in the presentation, when we talk about linkage analysis here, linkage analysis comes from an organizational psychologist, Paul Goodman, who's passed on now. And one thing that he often said was, everything is connected inside the organization. So if something's happening in sales, it's also happening in accounts, right? So there's, or whatever, in the traditional examples. Think of the chain that's related to, like if you've got a complex issue, think of the chain of people that are involved. And so here's an example that was one of the best ones I've had in recent years. We had a guy from Dulux back when it was a distribution center, I think it still is. And one of the exercises that we used to do when it was just managers, this is a while ago, we would say, who are you connected to and how do you influence them? And he said to me in class, he said, oh, I'm not connected to anybody and I don't have any influence. And I said, well, wait a minute, because linkage analysis is a political theory, right? I said, there's got to be people that you, when you make a decision, they're impacted. And he said, okay. So he drew it up and he drew this massive big sort of diagram like this one here. And then all of a sudden he had this realization when he was sitting in class. He goes, actually, there's a lot of people, when I make a decision, they're impacted by it. And that's one way that you can begin to get access into understanding how difficult problems are formulated. I mean, if you took, let's be frank, if you took people out of the equation, you wouldn't have problems. You'd have the natural world kicking on there and doing its own thing, but you wouldn't have people problems. So something to think about. Okay. All right, so what I might do is the second thing I thought was everybody was talking a lot about Moneyball. So moving on a little bit, I think if you have questions about the assignment, type them in. I wanted to highlight a couple of things about solutions. So when we move now, we're going to move pretty quickly now to week 3. One of the things about, hang on, I'll zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so Moneyball is technically about finding the optimal path, right? It's really a game of probabilities. And I'd recommend, if you've got a weekend to kill, that you listen to the book on Audible, if you've got that, or if you can afford it. If not, watch the movie. It's reasonably good as a movie. Now, I think someone in this room, was Kim or somebody, shared something where they said Brad Pitt's trying to get them to reframe the problem. It's precisely the meaning of that. So one of the theories of problem solving is operating under ambiguity, and it's very difficult, right? So what I want you to, the reason why I've included this is because the Moneyball book and the movie tells the true story of the Oakland A's, right? And how they won, I think it was 22 games in a row. That's not technically correct. By optimizing the leverage points in the problem. So they couldn't spend money, so they had to think about a different solution. So they worked on this statistical solution. And if you read the book, it goes into detail about the statistics of it. It's incredibly deep, but it's a very simple thing. You win baseball by getting more people home, right? So what they did was they analyzed their team and optimized it for the most likely people to get the most runs to get them home, even if, or on what they call on-base percentage. Why does that matter to us? Well, think about your problem, right? So one of the things that we operate under is, and you guys especially, way more than the generation previous, I think, to that, like in the 50s and 60s I'm talking about. You now have technical complexity, you have automation to think about, and we all do actually. So what do? Well, we try to optimize for the best possible outcome. Now, this is the thing I think I've seen popping up in the assignment chat is, well, I'm not sure if my solution is right. Well, you're not trying to be right, you're just trying to improve things. It's, you know, I know it's hard to grasp, but we're just trying to make things better. And what we have to do is we have to break our thinking a little bit and start to think about what's most likely to happen. What can we work with what we've got? So, you know, if we're struggling, like I'll pick on myself, if I'm struggling to go further along in a certain problem, like say it's my career or it's something that I want to do differently, I know I have a certain amount of resources. If getting more resources is a problem for me and I can't do it, then I can't consider getting more resources as an answer to that problem. So in generating, what do I mean? The reason I like Moneyball so much is because it takes the money thing off the table and says, we've got this much, we have to make it work with what we've got. And more and more, this will happen more and more as we get into more competitive environments, as jobs get more competitive, apparently, we're going to get into these kinds of discussions. So a very useful thing to do is to ask yourself this question: how can I reach the goal with the tools that I currently have? How can I get there with the constraints that I operate under? So this is, you know, and there's been some excellent discussions in there, and I'd recommend you go back and have a look at some of the backwards and forwards around that. You know, I wanted to mention that. But all I wanted to say here to give you a clue for the first assignment and the second one is you are optimizing. You're trying to figure out what is likely to happen. I am not expecting everyone here to say, I have 100% worked this out, because you're going to get feedback, and feedback will help you to optimize your approach even further, right? So there's some learning that will take place. So don't be afraid of that. So the more you fail, the better it is. I just wanted to say that. Okay. So that came up a lot. So in some of the chats, I got a question here. Do you think that a cost-benefit analysis should factor into the solution choice as well? Yeah, cost-benefit is a really good. So that's a pro and a con type approach. So yeah, definitely you can use that. It can factor in. So it may not be necessarily the best solution, but the most effective. Precisely, yeah. You have to be realistic. And I know that maybe some of you can relate to this. I go to these meetings and someone will get up on the board and they'll put up a chart and they'll say, in 5 years, things are going to be great. But that's not the way the world works. Like, we constantly dealing with fluxes and changes in the market. In our business, in the higher education business, we can have no students turn up in a program and then it'll take us 4 months to figure out why that happened, but we still have to close the program, right? Or we still have to, we've already resourced it and now we've lost that money. So these are the weird things that can happen in a market like this. So we can only ever optimize for the most likely best outcome. So yeah, that's a really good point, Jordan. Yeah, that's right. It may not be the best solution, but the most effective under the circumstances. So in module 1, we talked about operating under ambiguity. We operate under uncertainty and now an increasing amount of complexity. How do you tame complexity? Through feedback. It's the only way. You look at how you set up an idea, you try something, and you learn from it. But unfortunately, we don't get paid to fail, do we? But that's the only way to learn in some of these situations, more complex situations. Anyway, all right. How do you do it? So here's some hints about the I finally got to the slide that I wanted to get to earlier. Designing the optimal path. What do I mean? So if you've listened to this, that's okay. Effective, efficient, elegant. I said to that article about MDACF was great, but confused me a lot. Yeah, it's tough read. I won't lie to you. It is hard. It is hard. But that's, yeah, he's making a point there. There's a simpler version, I thought, but then I looked it up and it's the same article. Does this refer to the theory of taming or coping strategies rather than solving it? Yeah, it does. You're blazing a path. When you, pardon the metaphor, but when you hit it out of the park, you solve that problem. But then, because of the context and complexity, things change. So you can improve things. But what I want to highlight here is that your solution should be the optimal path. So in other words, so you've got a couple of ideas here. The solution is clear, but the path is not always clear. So that's a hard thing to grasp. Like when human thinking, we think of our current situation. So we're over here and we're moving in this direction. We're going forward. As we're going forward, we might find that we hit these obstacles, right? Even though we're on the optimal path. Well, then we have to work around those obstacles to get to our solution. And that's part of the mystery of problem solving, is that as you're going forward and you know where you're going and you've created that this is the solution, you may not be there yet, but you know that as you take steps to go through it, your brain will, and the team that you're working with will optimize for the most likely outcome, or the most likely. Think of the Moneyball, right? That's the perfect example of nonlinear complex problem solving. You're just trying to carve a path through the complexity to get to the solution as fast and as optimally as possible. You may only get halfway there, but if you know where the path is and you know what the goal is, then at least you can start to think of creative ways to tackle that. And that's next week's module as well. I have a couple of options to stop the problem occurring, then a strategy to address the problem if it happens. That's a very good saying. That's a very good saying. Yeah. It's funny because ideally we want to do what Akov said, which is remove the conditions that make the problem happen. So we want to take away what made the problem happen, like in our example over here. We want to remove some of these invisible factors, right? We want the intangible things, we want to get rid of them, but we can't always do that. So then you see human creativity, and this is why I have a lot of faith that we're going to be fine during the age of automation, because human creativity will always find a way. We have survived for thousands, if not millions of years, so we can definitely find a way. We can adapt. All right. So that's just one thing I wanted to make clear. Don't be too, if you get to the end and you say, I don't really have a solution, but you have some ideas, that's enough for this first part. So don't overinvest in getting it absolutely right, because this is not going to be one of those things. Oh, absolutely, Andrew. And I've got to get into the habit of reading these out loud. Do you think there should be more time spent in management getting to know the root cause of the problem before moving into solutions? Yep. We need to reflect on why things happen more, and and the reasons for that. And we need to stop jumping to immediately landing on certain ideologies as well sometimes. And by that, I mean, in my discipline, it's always finance related with technology and stuff like that. It's like, we need more money. Well, there isn't any more money. So you have to figure out a way to solve this without money. Like, you have to think about different strategies. So that's absolutely true. I shouldn't say that. There you go. It's a good point, Andrew. It's a very good point. We focus on that through our working backwards program. Oh, I'll have to check that out, Nathan. If you could send me some information on that, that'd be perfect. That'd be good. Next movie should be Cool Runnings. Amazon. I'll definitely check that out. Um, yeah, next movie should be Cool Runnings. Yeah, that's a perfect example. Cool Runnings. It's you got me. All right, so I think Amazon Web Services I can chat. Yes, Nathan, I was in a meeting today and they were talking about Google Cloud and Amazon Web Services, and I haven't kept up with it. And I saw today how that's going to replace a lot of the infrastructure we have, and it's already replacing it. It's interesting. Amazon's going to own half the known world soon. They're going to be a multi-trillion-dollar company, I think, with their strategy. Okay, so to try and encourage you a little bit, I always include this. This is what success looks like. So you got the straight arrow and then you got this wobbly arrow. You've all seen this on Facebook, no doubt. If you're not on Facebook, you would have seen it on something. It's everywhere. We have 650,000 employees and counting. Big. And Talha says, and usually a big values-driven problem will lead to small problems, which are actually symptoms of the mother problem. Everyone should write that down. That's it. Then we treat as problems. I think once we figure out the mother problems, we will see that they are the root cause of many other problems that occupy most of our efforts in the workplace. I agree. And we just don't do the thinking. So get out that mirror, get out that whiteboard, start thinking. And in module 3, as a little bit of a preview for you, in module 3, we talk about suspending judgment. So it's one of the most critical skills. So now we're moving out of the theory stuff and we're getting into the practical, applied, creative stuff now. And from this point forward, the course, it really kind of just runs through some techniques and skills and mindsets. So one of the things in that 3rd module, if you haven't listened to it yet, you may not have because you've been working on your assessment, but when you get into it, there's a section there, the reading on that's there, expanding the pie. The guy talks about, the team that wrote that actually talks about expanding problem definitions and suspending judgment before you make the call as to which one is the best creative solution to apply. So yeah, thank you, Tola. That was excellent. That's excellent. So anyway, don't be afraid to fail. In a session I was with today, and the guy who's got 2 startups, I couldn't believe it, and he's doing a PhD. Crazy, absolutely crazy. I don't know why he's doing it. But anyway, I asked him that after the break, and he said he sleeps 4 hours a night. So he said that, he tries to solve as many problems as he can in the same space at the same time, but he's not afraid to fail. So he actually, what he does, which I think is a really good tactic, is that he just starts trying to work things out by doing it and figuring it out and then suspending judgment until he hits on the right answer. So fail fast and fail often, I think is the saying. But that's what success looks like. Yeah. Don't worry if you're terrible at it. It's fine. It's something that it's very hard to do initially, and it's there's an element, I think, of openness that you have to learn when you're dealing with these kind of complex issues, and there's a whole stream of research on that. All right, we're coming up to our so anyway, there's just a little bit of encouragement for you. If you don't have any other questions now, I'll stop the screen share. Don't forget about the MBA for Life program. I meant to advertise that, but I might wind it up there. I think we were actually right on time for once, which is lovely. And I will be online for the next couple of next couple of days. And again, if you have any issues or dramas, please email me or send me a private chat message, and we'll deal with it that way. Otherwise, go and enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll see you guys next week when we'll be talking about creative problem solving. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening, and I'll chat to you guys soon. Thank you.